are a part of the ELA team at the Arizona Department of Education.
I am Dr. Amy Boza, Director of ELA Standards and Move On When Reading.
I am Lauren Spenceley, Secondary Literacy Specialist.
And I'm Eric Ambrosio, Research Assistant with WestEd.
We are so happy to share with you the next phase of our ESSA Informative Webinar Series. You are watching video number 2, which builds upon information shared in video 1. So if you haven't seen that video, you'll want to hop over and watch that one first. In video 1, we provided an understanding of state and federal law and how you can use it to help guide your program selections. Now, for a more in-depth dive on the levels of ESSA evidence to help you become an ESSA investigator.
So for this presentation today, you will need several handouts. So you most likely are already on this website since this is where the video is, but we are working from the Arizona Department of Education Move On When Reading for Administrators section. You will go to the blue tab that says ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. And when you open it, it'll look like this. You drop it down and you will find video 2. Please take a moment to click on Handout 1. They are all in PDF format. Handout 2 and Handout 3. And then you will also open the video link. Feel free to pause if you need a moment to gather your materials or if you would prefer to print the handouts. So we will give you a few moments and feel free to pause.
So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the handouts before we start. Handout 1 is the REL Midwest ESSA Tiers of Evidence, which accompanies a video that we'll watch together titled Understanding the ESSA Tiers of Evidence. The ESSA Tiers of Evidence handout provides some background on ESSA and the school improvement cycle. A table on the second page will be extremely helpful as you start to differentiate between the 4 ESSA Tiers of Evidence. Now I'm going to say a little bit about the second handout. Handout 2 is the non-regulatory guidance document. The non-regulatory guidance was published by the Department of Education to provide state educational agencies, local educational agencies, schools, educators, and partner organizations with information to assist them in selecting and using evidence-based activities, strategies, and interventions as defined by ESSA. Handout 3 is the REL West Evidence-Based Improvement Guide, which provides an initial set of tools to help states and school districts understand and plan for implementing evidence-based improvement strategies. Included in the document are 6 tools, each designed to encourage focused conversations and support cross-agency collaboration in making decisions about evidence-based interventions. Now that you have all the handouts, please reference Handout 1 as we watch the ESSA Tiers of Evidence video. Throughout the video and handouts, you will read about the school improvement cycle. This is important to consider as you make decisions about evidence-based interventions. And we will touch on this in future webinars. But for now, we want to focus on the 4 ESSA evidence tiers.
Each year, school and district leaders across the country choose programs, strategies, practices, and policies to improve students' learning. Although districts and schools have flexibility to choose interventions under the Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, and states' definitions of the ESSA standard.
As a reminder, intervention is a broad term that includes staffing, programs, products, activities, and strategies.
may differ, the law encourages school and district leaders to choose evidence-based interventions shown to improve student outcomes. By choosing interventions that have been rigorously studied and shown to improve student learning, district and school leaders increase the likelihood that student achievement will improve. When applying for federal funding and some state-sponsored grants, it's important to be aware of how the federal government and states define the evidence tiers and where to find the information necessary to determine them. ESSA uses 4 tiers of evidence to rate an intervention's potential effectiveness on improving student outcomes in a school or district.
As the video continues with the descriptions of each tier, you can find written out descriptions in the non-regulatory guidance. If you turn to pages 8 and 9, you will see that each of those 4 levels is detailed out with lots of information for you. So again, in the non-regulatory guidance package, pages 8 and 9.
Tier 1, strong evidence. Tier 2, moderate evidence. Tier 3, promising evidence. Tier 4, demonstrates a rationale. A further explanation of these tiers and their definitions can be found in the U.S. Department of Education's non-regulatory guidance released in 2016. When determining the evidence tier rating of an intervention for your school or district, there are 5 factors to consider. 1. The study design. 2. The results of the study. 3. The findings from related studies. 4. The sample size and setting. And 5. How the students and setting in the study overlap with the students and setting in your school or district. Because of the 5th factor, the evidence tier rating of the intervention can change from district to district and from school to school.
On your handout, the ESSA Tiers of Evidence handout, you will see these five factors to consider listed out. In later videos, we will show you how to review studies for these factors using things like What Works Clearinghouse, Evidence for ESSA, the REL West Tool 5, as was mentioned it is described more in this handout. And so we will be showing you how to consider those different factors using some various tools and websites to help you out.
Finding the information necessary to rate an intervention according to the ESSA Tiers of Evidence is simple. The What Works Clearinghouse, a federally funded database of education interventions, supplies related study results along with ESSA ratings for outcomes meeting Tiers 1 and 2, sample size, and setting information all in one place.
And so if you'll take your handout and flip it over to the back, you'll see the same chart that's posted here on the video to help you follow along and add any notes that you'd wish to add.
For an intervention's outcomes to be rated Tier 1, or as having strong evidence by a district or school, it must be supported by 1 or more well-designed, well-implemented experimental studies, meeting the What Works Clearinghouse standards without reservations. Have strong and positive findings of the intervention. Have no strong negative findings from other well-designed studies. Have at least 350 participants in the study sample and have been measured in more than 1 school or district. And have a similar population and setting to that of the district that is considering the intervention. For an intervention's outcomes to be rated Tier 2, or as having moderate evidence by a district or school, it must be supported by 1 or more well-designed, well-implemented quasi-experimental studies or experimental studies with high attrition, meeting the What Works Clearinghouse standards with reservations. Have strong and positive findings of the intervention. Have no strong negative findings from other well-designed studies. Have at least 350 participants in the study sample and have been measured in more than 1 school or district. And have a similar population or setting to that of the district that is considering the intervention.
The sample size of 350 participants, of at least 350 participants, is from the non-regulatory guidance. It is good to remember that the more studies and the more participants, the more confident you can feel about the results of the study.
While the What Works Clearinghouse does not currently designate outcomes as meeting Tiers 3 or 4, users can find this information in the Clearinghouse using the following criteria. For an intervention's outcomes to be rated Tier 3, or as having promising evidence by a district or school, it must be supported by one or more well-designed, well-implemented correlational study that controls for selection bias, or a well-designed causal study, have strong and positive findings of the intervention, have no strong negative findings from other well-designed causal studies. Interventions rated as Tier 3 do not have a sample or setting requirement, and do not have any requirement for having a similar population or setting. Tier 4, or demonstrates a rationale, is a way for states, districts, and schools to encourage innovation and research on promising interventions that do not yet have a research base that meets the ESSA standards, but may still improve student achievement. Interventions that are rated in the demonstrating a rationale tier have a well-defined logic model or theory of action supported by existing rigorous research and some effort already underway by a state, district, school, or research organization to determine their effectiveness. ESSA gives priority to the use of strong, moderate, or promising evidence in school improvement programs, and allows the use of Tier 4 evidence in other circumstances. Check with your state's school improvement and ESSA teams to learn more. To learn more about the ESSA tiers of evidence, check out the handout associated with this video on our website. And visit the What Works Clearinghouse to find reviews and ratings of existing research on programs, products, practices, and policies in education. To learn more about REL Midwest, check out our website, follow us on Twitter, and join us at one of our upcoming events.
In future videos, we will show you example studies of each level and show you how to navigate through the different considerations. When you are looking at these studies, these different areas, they're very important when you're looking at the research. Studies design, results of the study. We will help you know what to look for in each study, specifically things like statistical significance. Findings from related studies, looking at the body of evidence, the more studies, the better. Sample size and setting, and match. So looking at do the schools where the studies were done match your demographics, your population, etc. So in future videos, we will help you navigate that.
So now you have had a general overview, big picture of the elements of ESSA. We hope that you will join us for the next videos as we dig deeper into the continuous improvement cycle, how to determine an ESSA rating using What Works Clearinghouse, evidence for ESSA, reading studies, and other methods to help really dig in to get a clear understanding of what that intervention is and how it can impact your students and their literacy improvement. We're super happy that you were here to join with us today as we reviewed this information, and we hope that you will continue on this path of becoming an ESSA investigator with us as we learn and grow with our partners at the Regional Educational Laboratory West, Dr. Lene Dunn and Eric Ambroso. So we are super excited to have you, and hopefully we'll see you in the next video.
Thank you for joining us.